An outline on the history of Imam Jafar Sadiq, period 382 to 384. The risings of the Alids. The Alids were totally disappointed while seeing the Abbasids taking power in the name of Ahl Bayt. The first task before Abbas as-Safa, therefore, was to break the alliance with the Alids, who were yet strong and could be dangerous. During his short rule of less than 4 years, he was kept fully occupied in meeting numerous insurrections and in ruthlessly killing those Alids who were suspected. The first to pay his life was Abu Salama. Abu Abbas died in 136-754 AD, during which period the Alids in Medina, disorganized by the frustration of their hopes, kept quiet. But when Abu Jafar Mansur, the brother of Abu Abbas as-Safa, assumed the caliphate, the Alids, embittered by the usurpation of the rights by the House of Abbas, began to voice their complaints, and Nafs Zakiya, the son of Abdullah al-Mahad, openly refused to take oath of allegiance to Mansur. The traditionalist circle of Medina supported him and upheld his cause. According to Tabari, Malik bin Anas declared that the oath sworn to the Abbasids was no longer binding, as it had been taken on compulsion. Soon afterwards, in 137-750 AD, Abu Muslim was lured to Iraq and murdered. In 141-758 AD, Mansur massacred a group of the Ravandiya who besieged his palace. Caliph Mansur thus had to face the most threatening opposition from the Alids to the newly established authority of his house. He firstly concentrated his effort on the two basic points. The first was to justify the rights of his house on religious ground. The second was to gain to the caliphate the acceptance of the Muslims. The sources agree to mention that Caliph Mansur also persecuted Imam Jafar Sadiq many times, but Imam Jafar Sadiq retained his equanimity. The Abbasids had also adopted a very cruel policy towards the Umayyads, and many members of the family were ruthlessly executed. Some Umayyads, however, escaped and sought refuge among the nomadic tribes. One of them being Abdurrahman, the grandson of Hisham. He escaped to Rah near Euphrates, where he began to prepare for the long journey to Africa, where few other Umayyad princes had already taken refuge. On 1st Shawwal 138, March 8, 756 AD, he entered Archidona, the capital of Regio, where he had declared an Amir. Hence, he became the king of the Umayyads in the southern districts of Spain. Returning to the thread of our main narratives, it is recounted that Jafar Sadiq died in 148-765 AD in Medina, after the imamat of 34 years and 7 months. Upon his death, the imamat devolved upon his elder son Ismaili. Ismaili history 383 BC, wives and children. Jafar Sadiq had 7 sons and 4 daughters. His first wife was Fatima. For the first 25 years, he had only 2 sons by his first wife, Ismail and Abdullah, and a daughter, Farwa. His second wife was Hamida, the mother of Musa Kazim and Muhammad. Besides, Abbas, Ali, Asma, and Fatima were also the children of Jafar Sadiq. The butchery of Karbala and the sack of Medina had almost led to the closing of the lecture room of the Imams in Medina. With the appearance of Jafar Sadiq as the head of Muhammad's descendant, it acquired a new lease of life. Abu Amr Muhammad al-Kashani writes in Marifat Akbar al-Rijal that once Jafar Sadiq was pointed out by his disciples for wearing fine apparel, a variant of clothes from Marwa, while his ancestors had worn rude and simple garments. He replied that his ancestors had lived in a time of scarcity, while he lived in a time of plenty, and that it was proper to wear the clothing of one's own time. Extremely liberal and rationalistic in his teachings, Jafar Sadiq was also a scholar, a poet, and a philosopher, well grounded in some of the foreign languages. He impressed a distinct philosophical character on the Madanite school. W. Ivanov writes in Ismailis and Karamatins that Jafar Sadiq chiefly emphasized the tendency of moderation and sobriety in religious beliefs. That is, exactly the qualities which strike us so much in early Ismailism. Ismaili history 384 BC. Scientific contributions of Imam Jafar Sadiq. Jafar Sadiq was a scientist. Besides, we cannot but invite attention to a fact that Jabir bin Hayyan, known as Jabir, the father of modern chemistry, worked with the materials gathered by Jafar Sadiq in Medina, who referred to his Lord in his writings as "my master" and a mine of wisdom. The intellectuals in Renaissance in Europe greatly took benefits from the treatises of Jabir bin Hayyan, and these were translated into Latin, German, French, and English. He is world famed as the father of Arabic alchemy. The word alchemia is usually said to be derived from the Egyptian kamit or kimit, the black, or some have thought from the Greek chyma, molten metal. According to the Cultural Atlas of Islam by Ismail al-Faruqi and Louis al-Faruqi, that in response to Jafar Sadiq's wishes, he invented a kind of paper that resisted fire and an ink that could be read at night. He invented an additive which, when applied to an iron surface, inhibited rust, and when applied to a textile, would make it water repellent. Jabir bin Hayyan defined chemical combination as union of the elements together in small particles too much for the naked eyes to see without loss of their character, as John Dalton, the English chemist and physicist, was to discover 10 centuries later. He was, however, first to describe the processes of calcination and reduction, improved the methods of evaporation, sublimation, melting and crystallization, prepared acetic acid, sulfuric acid, nitric acid and the mixture of the last two, and the mixture of sulfuric acid and nitric acid, in which gold and silver could be dissolved, discovered several chemical compounds, and separated antimony and arsenic from the sulfides. One of the renowned titles of Jafar Sadiq was Kashif al-Haqaiq, means one who reveals mysteries, and also Muhakkik, means researcher. The reason for investing him such titles was that he had disclosed many wonderful scientific theories that were unknown to the Arab world. For instance, it is related that once Jafar Sadiq said, "God has created a planet with cold water on the seventh heaven, and other 6 planets have been created with hot water." This is an explicit discovery of a planet called Pluto. Clyde Tombaugh, however, discovered it photographically on January 21, 1930 at the Lowell Observatory in Arizona. The world's 7th heaven signifies the most distant planet in the solar system, as its distance is 3.67 billion miles from the Sun. Being remote in distance, the rays of the Sun reach very mild, resulting in the temperature as low as 360 degrees Fahrenheit, and thus it remains or minus 218 degrees Celsius, and thus it remains frozen. On account of its coldness, Jafar Sadiq expounded the creation of Pluto with cold water. He was therefore the first to report the very existence of Pluto. In Arabic astronomy, Kawakib is the general term for the luminous heavenly bodies, and thus the word Al-Kawakib Al-Saira means the planets as opposed to the stars, or it is known as Al-Kawakib Al-Thabita. Only 5 planets, Kawakib, were known to the Arabs in pre-Islamic period, known as Al-Kawakib Al-Khamsa or Al-Mutahhira. When the Greek science had been translated in the Arabian Peninsula in the time of Jafar Sadiq, the Arabian astrologers accepted the theory of 6 planets by adding Zuhul, Saturn, in their study. Thus, the 3 planets below the sphere of the Sun were known as the lower planets, Al-Kawakib al-Sufliya, Venus, Zuhra, Mercury, Tharid, and the moon, Qamar, while the other three planets beyond the sphere of the sun were called the high planets, Al-Kawakib al-Ulwiya, Saturn, Zuhul, Jupiter, Mashtari, and Mars, Marikh. The credit, therefore, for reporting the existence of Pluto for the first time goes to Jafar Sadiq, when the instrument observing the heavenly bodies was not then invented. There is also another astronomical discovery by Jafar Sadiq, who once asked a Syrian astrologer, "How much is the light of Sukaina less than that of Venus, Zohra?" The astrologer said, "I swear upon God that I never heard until today even the name of this planet." This tradition most unambiguously indicates the very existence of one another planet which was also unknown then, but it had been discovered with the help of telescope by the English astronomer William Herschel in 1781, known as Uranus. The Arabic word Sukaina is derived from Sukun, means rest, and how appropriate a name it is for Uranus, which would appear from the slow and the restful way in which it completes its revolution around the sun, and as a result it is called as a fainter planet. Jafar Sadiq spoke in the same breath of two such different planets as Venus and Uranus, the Venus being bright and rapid, and the Uranus a very faint, slowing moving orbit. Jafar Sadiq is said to have propounded few other important scientific theories in his discourses. For instance, he once said, "The visual rays of an object enter in our eyes, whose only one part flashes in our eyes, resulting our inability to perceive an object so easy which is far from us. The rays of an object lying at a distance can be totally entered in our eyes and we can see it very closely, provided an instrument is invented through which the rays of the farthest object can enter in the eyes." And then the camels in the desert, grazing at a distance of 3,000 yards, will be seen at a distance of 60 yards. It means that the grazing camels will be seen 50 times nearer. This is perhaps the first correction of the theories of sight rays as expounded by Euclid and Ptolemy, which were supposed to radiate out of eyes onto the object. Later on, the theory of the Jafar Sadiq had been accepted after many experiments by the renowned scientist of Fatimid period called Ibn al-Hashim, known as Al-Hasan. His acclaimed treatises on optics, namely Kitab al-Manasir, was translated into Latin under the title Optici Thesaurus al-Hasini in 1270 by Whitlow. Afterwards, it was published by the Friedrich Risner at Basel in 1572. According to Ibn al-Hashim, it is not a ray leaving the eyes that causes sight. It is far more than the form of the perceived object that radiates onto the eye and is converted by its transparent body. Jafar Sadiq further recommended for an invitation of an instrument to watch an object of a remote distance 50 times nearer. Hence, the European scientist Roger Bacon had also proposed for such instrument, bringing an object 50 times near to our sight. Later on, the Italian scientist Galileo was destined to invent this digestive instrument, that is, telescope, in 1610, whose functions absolutely based on the theory of Jafar Sadiq, bringing an object visible 50 times closer to its actual distance.